By the beginning of 1975, Kiss had reached a dangerous point. They weren't failing, but they weren't succeeding either. They had momentum, but no proof it could last. They had belief, but no safety net. What had changed was the structure around them. Kiss were no longer operating on instinct alone. A small group of people, trusted, ambitious and increasingly aligned, were helping guide the band towards something bigger. Bill Aucoin, Neil Bogart and Sean Delaney, a songwriter, producer and creative ally whose influence helped sharpen the band's image and larger-than-life attitude at a critical turning point in their career. 1975 wouldn't just be about working harder, it would be about working smarter. The year opened with a photo session at the famous Playboy building in Los Angeles. On the surface, it was just another shoot, but behind the scenes it reflected a growing awareness, largely driven by the band's manager Bill Aucoin, that Kiss needed to exist in mainstream spaces, even if they didn't fully belong there yet. Aucoin understood optics. He encouraged the band to accept opportunities that placed them alongside established cultural institutions, even when it felt uncomfortable. Sean Delaney, increasingly involved in how the band presented themselves, helped reinforce the idea that contrast was powerful. Kiss didn't need to blend in, they needed to stand out. They hired photographer Richard Kramer and got to work. The Playboy rooftop images quietly did their job. Musically, Kiss entered 1975 aware that something had to give. Songs didn't just need riffs, they needed messages audiences could immediately understand. Demo recordings for the next album reflected this philosophy. Songs were more concise, choruses were more direct. The band went to Larrabee Studios in Los Angeles to lay down the tracks. At the demo recording session they recorded 4 tracks: Burning Up with Fever, Anything for My Baby and Mistake. At the centre was Rock and Roll All Nite. Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons wrote it as an invitation, not a statement. Delaney encouraged them to lean into repetition and simplicity, not as compromise, but as strategy. At the time, it felt almost too obvious. It didn't feel like a hit.
Pretty quickly, I came up with the chords and a few lines for a chorus. I want to rock and roll all night and party every day. I knew this was the perfect battle cry. I went down the hall and knocked on Gene's door. "What do you think of this?" I asked, playing what I had. "I have a song called Drive Me Wild, but I only have the verses and no chorus," he said. It went, "You show us everything you got. You drive us wild, we'll drive you crazy." We coupled his verse to my battle cry.
We put the two together, and before we knew it, we had this new song, which eventually became Rock and Roll All Night. The song was simple, which was very appealing, and it had a vocal chorus that was sung by a large group of people in the studio. Not just the 4 band members, but engineers, families of people from the record label, about 20 people in all. We felt the energy of it immediately. It was like those old Slade songs that we had liked when we were just starting out, but with this very accessible Middle America feel. We had a feeling it was going to be big.
It had universal appeal, and I remember the day we tracked that, and we had Neil Bogart and Joyce Biowitz, my old manager that used to manage us with Bill Aucoin, and a lot of people from Casablanca Records. We were all singing the chorus in the studio. And that song had magic. It was just one of those songs that did it, and it's still one of our signature songs.
As we got to work and finished the song, I could picture people pumping their fists and singing along. This could be the rock and roll national anthem.
A big San Francisco welcome for our special guest tonight, Kiss!
On February the 8th, it was time to begin work on the 3rd studio album. The album was recorded back at Electric Lady Studios in New York City, the legendary studio built by Jimi Hendrix and where they had cut their original demo back in 1973 with Eddie Kramer and Dave Whitman. The working title for the album was Kiss at Midnight, but the band later opted for Dressed to Kill. But unlike many albums recorded there, Dressed to Kill was not a luxurious months-long affair. The entire album was recorded in just a few weeks, with some sources saying basic tracks were completed in days, not weeks. There was no time for overthinking, no endless takes, no studio perfectionism. If it felt good, it went on tape. A huge reason Dressed to Kill sounds so immediate is because much of it already existed before the studio sessions. Songs like Room Service, Two-Timer, She and Rock Bottom had been road-tested live. In fact, She was actually a song dating back to the days of Wicked Lester, Simmons and Stanley's previous band, and had Steve Coronel, that band's founder, as a co-writer. Kiss didn't write concept albums. They wrote songs to win over an audience in the first 30 seconds. Paul Stanley later described the goal as writing short, punchy tracks that hit hard and didn't overstay their welcome. That's why Dressed to Kill is barely 30 minutes long. No filler, no experiments, just hooks. Most of the album was recorded with the band playing together, or as close to it as possible. Peter Criss's drums were recorded clean and dry, no massive reverb. Gene Simmons' bass followed the guitar riffs tightly, keeping everything grounded. Ace Frehley's guitar solos were often first or second takes, raw, melodic, and imperfect. Paul Stanley's vocals were aggressive, confident, and right up front in the mix. This was a deliberate reaction to Hotter Than Hell, which the band felt buried their sound. On Dressed to Kill, you hear every hit, every riff, every shout. Neil Bogart, deeply invested and increasingly hands-on, stepped in as producer. His relationship with the band had grown closer, less executive, more collaborator. But he was inexperienced as a producer and relied heavily on engineers George Lopez and Dave Whitman, who mixed the album.
Well, I would have to say that he had, input as to the songs and the arrangements and stuff like that. I mean, I did not. So it was certainly more Neil than me. I just kept my mouth shut and only answered if I was asked the question. I would give an opinion or something like that. But I don't know. I would say Neil. Like I said, he was there every day, and I think he was part of the production situation, as to the best of my memory. That was like my second or third major project was that record. So I mean, I just did my best to make it sound as powerful and just like as powerful and as I could.
Bogart wasn't interested in perfection. He wanted urgency. And Bill Aucoin reinforced that idea. This record wasn't the destination, it was a stepping stone. Ace Frehley's acoustic introduction to Paul Stanley's Rock Bottom reflected Sean Delaney's influence, using contrast and dynamics to tell a story within a song. The album came together quickly. Too quickly, some would later argue. But it moved forward, and that mattered. The album artwork was mostly shot the previous year on October 26, 1974, on the corner of West 23rd Street and 8th Avenue in New York. Shot by Bob Gruen, the band posed in suits on a New York street, except they weren't really the band's suits.
The suit I wore belonged to Bill Aucoin, our manager at the time. It was too small because he was a smaller guy, and I'm 6'2". And that's why it looks so funny. The clogs, I think, belonged to Ace. I did not have a suit or a dress-up thing in those days. The rest of the suits, I do know that Paul had a suit. Paul Stanley, that was his suit. Now, whether Ace and Peter had one, I suspect Peter had his own because he was a sharp dresser. He had suits and ties and, all those fluffy things and scarves.
Dressed to Kill came as part of a photo novella that we were making for Cream magazine. Photo novella is kind of like a comic book made of photographs. And it was 2 pages where Kiss finds out about a John Denver concert, which we actually cleverly disguised by calling him John Cleveland. But they hear about this concert and they think that the world is just getting so boring, and they want to save the world with rock and roll. So they put up fake posters, and everybody comes to the John Cleveland concert, and they come out as Kiss, and they save the world, and they get rewarded. They get medals pinned on them, and they have an orgy. For some reason, the picture that's titled Kiss Orgy is one of the most popular pictures on my website, as far as, number of hits. But when we did that with a picture that, as we were coming out of it, we went to a subway and they're dressed in suits and ties, because in the morning when they find out about this concert, they're actually on their way to work in their secret identity. Like Clark Kent has a suit and tie instead of looking like Superman. In this case, they did have their Kiss face, as if nobody would recognize their face, being Kiss. But they had suits and ties. And as we came out of the subway, I said, "Oh, here, let's take a picture on the sidewalk, stand over by that lamppost." And then we took some pictures and we moved on. When Kiss saw the magazine with the picture of them by the lamppost, they loved it so much, they said, "Oh, we're going to use that for an album cover." So it wasn't even done originally for the album cover. They came up, looking at the picture, they came up with the title Dressed to Kill. That wasn't preconceived. That was something they decided after they saw the picture.
On February 24th, Gruen reunited with the band in the same suits and took more candid photos within Electric Lady Studios. Gene Simmons later joked that the cover looked classy from the waist up and ridiculous below. But Sean Delaney recognised something in the discomfort. The band looked powerful and out of place at the same time, and that contrast became iconic. Kiss in makeup, Kiss in suits, Kiss owning the street. Aucoin approved the image immediately. It sent a message without explaining itself. 4 outsiders claiming space they weren't supposed to occupy. Released in March 1975, Dressed to Kill didn't explode, but it didn't disappear. Bogart promoted it relentlessly. Aucoin secured press, and Delaney continued refining the band's onstage identity. Rock and Roll All Nite began to take on a life of its own during live shows. Audiences responded instinctively, clapping and chanting, staying engaged. The song captured the feeling of the time and what the band stood for. It wasn't a hit yet, but it was working. Kiss flooded magazines like Circus, staged aggressive Manhattan photo sessions, and made themselves impossible to ignore.
A few days after the release of Dressed to Kill on March 21st, 1975, we had a homecoming show booked at the Beacon Theater in Manhattan. Fewer than 2 months after we had opened for JoJo Gunn in Santa Monica and were told to come up with another album, JoJo Gunn opened for us at the Beacon. The Beacon represented a step up. A lot of the places we played during our first year of touring were converted movie theaters or vaudeville theaters. Places like the Tower Theater in Philadelphia, the Paramount in Portland, and the Orpheum in Boston. My old haunt, the Fillmore East, which had already closed by then, started life as a Yiddish theater too. They were grand theaters with terrific acoustics, but they were about half the size of the Beacon. The Beacon was so big that the New York promoter Ron Delsner agreed to do the show only if he didn't have to put up any money in advance. He didn't think he'd sell enough tickets to cover a guarantee. But when the tickets went on sale, they sold so quickly that the only way to meet the demand was to do 2 shows in one night. We felt like returning heroes when we came back to the city to headline 2 shows. We'd gone off boys and come back men. We were a different band with a lot more experience and a following that a lot of people, including the New York promoter, didn't realize we had. It felt like a victory parade.
On March 24th, Kiss returned again to the streets of Manhattan for another photo shoot, this time with photographers Steve Morley and Salvatore De Benedetto. Aucoin understood saturation, Delaney understood narrative, and Bogart understood repetition. Together, they pushed the band forward relentlessly.
Let's have a very warm midnight special welcome for Kiss.
Kiss's appearance on NBC's The Midnight Special represented a milestone. It was recorded on April 1st and the band played 4 songs: Deuce, She, Black Diamond and Come On and Love Me. This was the first time that Paul Stanley would smash his guitar on the floor at the climax of Black Diamond, a tradition that would continue throughout his career. This wasn't niche television, this was national exposure. Aucoin had worked carefully to ensure the band came across as dangerous, but not alienating. It was around this time that Paul Stanley performed 2 shows wearing sunglasses due to a severe eye infection, an unplanned deviation that could have undermined the band's visual impact. So dedicated to the mystery of the band was Stanley that he went to the hospital to get his eye examined wearing full Kiss makeup. This could have been a major setback. Instead, it reinforced something important. The show went on. It always would. Casablanca Records was still bleeding money. Despite this, Neil Bogart signed Kiss to a second contract. It was a renegotiation and a guarantee of at least 2 more albums from the band within the following year. The band signed the contract under their legal names, not their stage names. It wasn't logic, it was belief.
Being back out on the road also meant less conflict within the band. For one thing, we were forced to function as a unit on the road. For another thing, despite whatever issues each of us was dealing with, the availability of women tended to replace the intra-band friction with a much more pleasurable type of friction when we were on tour. And anyway, being on stage playing rock and roll was my dream. Sure, we were making only $60 a week, that's what Bill salaried us, but I was getting paid to rock. This was my job. Every week on the road was another week I wasn't driving a taxi or working for the phone company.
You know what the biggest problem for us in the 70s was? Bands didn't want us to open for them because we're a tough act to follow. We got all these bombs and amplifiers and you name it, we got it. Nobody wanted to follow us, so we had problems, you know. It was a lot of fun, you know. I was young, I was crazy. There was a lot of girls everywhere. And no shortage of that. And of course, alcohol and drugs. So I really enjoyed touring with Rush. We became really close. And after the shows, we used to hang out together in my room or in Peter's room, whoever had the bigger suite. And sometimes Alex Lifeson from Rush would put a paper bag over his head and draw a face on it and smoke a joint out of it and tell jokes. Peter used to get up and he invented this character called Dr. Rosenblum, and he'd act like this really sick, demented doctor. And he'd put on glasses and put on a white shirt and act like a complete imbecile. You know, but we were drinking beer and smoking pot and we were rolling around on the floor laughing, you know.
They were very good to us. Those guys like to have a good time, especially Gene, and their hotels were always fun to watch.
Every night after the show, the girls would line up. My God, you can even be an ugly bastard like me and get laid. And none of the Rush guys ever did it. I just never understood it. And I said, they're not gay. No. Farm animals? No, that's not it. What the fuck did you do when you went back to your hotel room?
We were an opening act for so long, and we had a really good relationship with the guys in KISS and their crew. I mean, KISS were always a perfectly focused corporation. And in those days, I saw Gene Simmons' notebook of all the costumes for KISS from their high school days. And him and Paul knew exactly what they were doing and how they were going to do it. But the softer-hearted ones, like Ace and Peter, you know, they couldn't play that role with that same cynicism, and they became damaged by it in a tragic way because they were such lovable people.
Bogart had grown closer to the band, spending time around rehearsals, shows and creative discussions. He understood that the studio albums weren't telling the full story. Aucoin agreed. The solution wouldn't come from another studio record. It would come from the stage.
Bill Aucoin had hatched a plan. The plan. We were building a rabid following as a live act. We had climbed to at least occasional headlining status, especially in the heartland, but this wasn't reflected in our tepid album sales. With 120,000 sales, Dressed to Kill had done better than Hotter Than Hell's 90,000 and Kiss's 60,000. But it was nothing when we considered the crowds we saw at our shows. Where was the disconnect? What was going on? The albums didn't sound like we sounded live. And so, Bill presented his plan. A live album, a sonic souvenir of our show, which now attracted people in droves. As a model, he held up a live album by Uriah Heep that had helped that British band establish themselves. That album had worked in Britain, but the idea of a career-boosting live album by rock bands was not yet established in the United States. This was all before live albums made the careers of Peter Frampton, Cheap Trick, and Bob Seger, to name a few. Since the only thing missing as far as the band was concerned was an album that truly represented us, Bill's idea struck a chord. We hired Eddie Kramer to produce the live recordings. Bill arranged to hire photographer Finn Costello, who had worked on the Uriah Heep album, and we used the title Alive from a live record by Slade. Through the summer of 1975, we recorded shows, beginning with a sold-out Cobo Hall in Detroit, where Costello shot the audience, 12,000 people strong, for the back cover. We shot the front cover image in Detroit too, but we went across town to the Michigan Palace, the site of some of our best early shows and our rehearsal space for a few days in the run-up to the live recording at Cobo.
Finn Costello's Alive photo shoot captured KISS exactly as Aucoin and Delaney wanted them remembered. Sweaty, violent, larger than life. No smiles, no irony, just force. As well as the photo shoot on May 15th, the band also recorded promo videos for Come On and Love Me and Rock and Roll All Nite. Kiss Alive was recorded during the band's 1975 Dressed to Kill tour, primarily at shows in Detroit, Cleveland, Wildwood, New Jersey and Davenport, Iowa. The performances were captured throughout the year with additional crowd noise and touch-ups added later at Electric Lady Studios in New York City to recreate the full live experience.
I get a phone call from Neil Bogart, who was the head of Casablanca Records. And he says, "Hey, Eddie," this is like a couple of years later, they'd had 3 albums out, and they did very well, okay. "We want to do a live album with Kiss. Are you interested?" I said, "Hey, Neil, can I call you back in 5 minutes?" "Okay." Hang up the phone. Sitting on my desk is a tape that I just got in from a guy named Tom Schultz, Boston. It was the first Boston demo tape. And I called him up and I said, "Tom, I can't add anything to this record. It's fucking great. Put it out." And I hang up the phone, call Neil. "Yeah, okay, I'm going to do it." Why did I want to do it? Because it was a challenge, because of all of it. Imagine being on stage with these boots and you can't play in time, you can't play in tune. What a challenge. And that's how we did Kiss Alive.
And you made it work.
Eddie Kramer shaped the chaos. Overdubs corrected flaws, crowd noise was layered deliberately. This was not deception, it was translation. For the first time, Kiss used the opening proclamation. You wanted the best, and you got it. The hottest band in the land, Kiss. Spoken by roadie and sound engineer J.R. Smalling, the line encapsulated everything the inner circle believed about the band. It wasn't just an introduction, It was branding, mythology and confidence fused into one moment.
We were big in Detroit. For some reason, we caught on in Detroit way before we got caught on in New York or LA. You know, we were headlining Cobo Hall in Detroit when we were playing a 2,500 seater here or, you know, the same in LA. It took, you know, for some reason, Detroit got it. And it took the country a few more years to catch up to Detroit.
There was a big New York music scene, and a lot of bands were coming out of New York. A lot of them didn't last too long, but there was a lot of excitement. There was New York Dolls, Magic Tramps, Wayne County, a whole lot of stuff going on. We were part of that, I guess.
We wanted to be the Beatles. We wanted to be 4 guys that each one of us was like John, Paul, Ringo, and George, and everyone loved each one of us separately, but all together they loved us like immensely. And that was, we thought, wow, what a great idea. It was like kind of when we saw Alice Cooper. He was the only one who had makeup on. No one else did. So we thought, what would it be like if 4 guys had the makeup on? And the 4 guys all shared the limelight. It was great. Those days are gone. You know, everything went crazy. Everybody got ego crazy and money, and all those bad things started happening, drugs and everything else. But the idea was brilliant.
Paul was more the classic rocker. He wanted to be a rock star, period. Ace and Peter had those notions as well, but they were never able to really verbalize just what they were all about. I wanted Kiss to be the best of all worlds. I loved comic books. I loved horror movies. I didn't have preconceived notions about rock bands and, quite honestly, didn't care. It wasn't enough to tour and be a recording artist. Somehow, Kiss should be about all these other areas as well.
During the summer of 1975, Kiss were continuously busy with photo shoots, including the June the 4th White Room session with LA photographer Norman Seeff at his studio, and the Music Live session on July 27th in Ashley's Restaurant in New York with photographer David Tan.
I like the novelist who gets up every day and from 9 a.m. until 10 p.m. or whatever that time is, sits in front of his then typewriter, and whether he feels the inspiration or not, puts in the time. It's time for work. Inspiration, as far as I'm concerned, is highly overrated. Put in the time. And that's what I do. I have a working man's ethic. I get up at the crack of dawn, go up all day, do all sorts of things until I'm dog tired.
So you're a preacher of the gospel. Perspiration will beat even inspiration.
Success is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. The harder I work, the luckier I get. There's just no substitute.
I had this great idea that Connie Kramer, who was the publisher's wife and assistant to the publisher, read an article in Esquire magazine about a woman who went on stage with Ike and Tina Turner, and she had me read it, and she goes, "Think you could do that?" And I go, "Oh yeah, I could do that." So we called up Kiss's management, and I said, "I'd like to join the band for a day on stage," and they said yes. So I packed a bag, hopped on a plane, and I just got on stage. They were all in. They actually loved it too.
They would also be busy writing, and on August 4th, they went to Magna Graphics Enterprises studio in New York to cut demos for their next album. These demos revealed a shift in ambition. The band was thinking cinematically, structurally, strategically. Sean Delaney continued shaping lyrical intent, Aucoin thought in terms of legacy, and Bogart thought in terms of impact. This wouldn't be another stepping stone. This would be a statement. More photo sessions followed, including Peter Criss's solo session for Cream magazine's Stars Cars article. The session took place on August 22nd at photographer Finn Costello's home in Weston, Connecticut. Criss was photographed with his 1955 MG Rover TF 1500. Then the following day, Criss and Costello would return to New York for a full band shoot. Model Megan McCracken was living with Bill Aucoin, and a late decision was made for her to feature alongside the band, posing with bondage equipment, and in many shots was nude. On September 3rd, Kiss returned to Electric Lady Studios in New York to begin work on their 4th studio album. The band and Casablanca Records knew that if success was going to happen, it needed to happen soon. 3 albums with disappointing sales would not sustain the band or the label. Their live album was at the time still unreleased, and in a break between tours, they set to work. To produce their next album, Kiss chose Bob Ezrin. Ezrin wasn't just a producer, he was a director. Known for his work with Alice Cooper, he brought structure, psychology and a theatrical mindset that immediately clashed with Kiss's loose, live-first approach. Ezrin ran rehearsals like boot camp. He forced the band to rehearse songs endlessly before recording. He challenged lyrics, he questioned arrangements, he pushed them into uncomfortable territory. For Kiss, who are used to blasting through songs on instinct, this was shocking. But Ezrin saw something they didn't yet fully understand. Kiss could be more than a great live band. They could be iconic. On September 10th, the band's live album Alive was released. This was a last-ditch attempt at success, with the band, management and label praying that capturing the band's live experience would finally get Kiss noticed on the world stage. Some critics objected, the audience didn't. When Alive was released, it became Kiss's first gold album. Radio stations embraced the live version of Rock and Roll All Nite, and for the first time, belief turned into proof. The band's lives began to change. Hotels improved, money stabilized, and recognition followed. The hard work was finally paying off. With success came friction. Kiss nearly left Casablanca Records over financial disputes. It was a dispute regarding royalties. The band felt undervalued. Bogart felt unappreciated. Aucoin worked behind the scenes to keep the relationship intact, and Casablanca Records would pay Kiss $2 million in unsettled royalties. Everyone understood the truth. Alive had saved everyone. Walking away now would have been catastrophic. The homecoming concert in Cadillac, Michigan was more than symbolic. The city embraced it fully. Streets filled, local businesses participated, fans travelled long distances. For the band, it was a moment of validation. The gamble had worked.
The coaches decided that we needed to do something to loosen up this team, to get them to play and have a lot of fun, rather than trying to duplicate the success of the 1973 team. So I had been involved in rock and roll since I was a little kid, and I suggested that perhaps we could play some rock and roll in the locker room, and that would loosen people up. And so while Kiss was becoming popular in places like New York City and Detroit, that still hadn't filtered up to Cadillac really. They had put out 4 albums. Well, they were crazy, they were wild, they were in makeup. They did special effects, there was flames going. And there's a saying in football, keep it simple, stupid. Kiss. So I thought, well, this is the perfect band. Well, much to his credit, Coach Bryan said, hey, let's go with that and let's give it a try. So we started playing Kiss music in the locker room before practices and before games. So when you combine the coaching move and the playing of the Kiss music in the locker room, that's what kind of got this whole thing rolling.
And in Cadillac, Michigan High School, they would play Kiss music in the halftime during the football games. And when they did, they always won the game. And I got a call from the coach one day and said, you know, the morale is down in the school a bit and everything. Do you think Kiss might be able to come out here? It would really be great, and it would kind of symbolize everything and all the winning games we had. And I said, well, it's a possibility, but we have to do something special if that's going to happen. Do you think people would put on the Kiss makeup? Do you think everyone would wear Kiss makeup, something like that? And he said, well, we could talk about it. And finally we talked about it enough that everyone agreed that that's what would happen. We'd have Kiss Day at the high school. And so we sent directions out to them on how to put Kiss makeup, and we got all sorts of makeup to send to the high school so everyone could do it.
Well, Kiss's manager came back with, well, listen, as long as we're thinking about doing that, why don't we just bring the whole concert show to Cadillac High? Very few people knew what was going to happen. That was for just our own sake. Cadillac didn't have a huge security force. We didn't want to worry about tickets being sold to the general public outside of Cadillac. We wanted this to be an event just for our students in town. The city council said, oh, you're having a parade anyway. We don't have a problem with you putting a cardboard sign over the street sign that says Kiss Boulevard for a half hour. That doesn't make any difference to us.
WATT Radio.
I'm just calling Mr. Myers. This is Mr. Myers?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hello? Hello.
That's Darryl?
Yeah.
Hi, this is J.R. Smalley. I'm Kiss's road manager. How you doing, man?
Pretty good.
Dynamite. You all set to roll on this taping?
Yeah, we're all set.
Okay. You'll be speaking with Ace Frehley, lead guitar player, and Gene Simmons, the bass player. Hold on. Hi, Dale.
Hi.
This is Gene Simmons. How are you?
Hi, pretty good.
This is Ace.
Hi, how you doing?
Fine. How are things doing in Cadillac?
Pretty good.
That's all?
Okay, I'm talking with Ace Frehley and Gene Simmons from the hottest rock and roll band in the land, Kiss, and I know that there are a lot of questions that a lot of your fans would like to know about you, and is this something that you've always wanted to do? You've always wanted to be in a band?
We were born with makeup on, you see. Our parents have worn makeup, and it goes back for hundreds and hundreds of years. Yes, it comes from a long line of makeup wearers.
Gene's parents used to be in the circus.
Who came up with the name Kiss for the band?
Paul Stanley.
I think he's swimming
somewhere. We want everybody to know that Kiss does listen to WATT. And that's my radio voice. This is my natural voice. And hello there, everybody in Radio Land. This is Gene Simmons, and we listen to WAP Radio.
Out of sight.
Tell me something, Daryl. We're really looking forward to going into Cadillac, and everybody's been telling us that it's really shaping up. How is it from the front line?
Well, I'll tell you, the town is really excited. I am, and I know that a lot of the kids in the Cadillac High School they're gung-ho. They can't wait till you get here.
Absolutely great. And when we get there, we're going to put on the best show they've ever seen in their lives. We're going to give them more than any other rock and roll band has ever given them, and you will see it on stage tomorrow night.
Out of sight, I can dig it. It's going to be great.
You should have been here last night. We played, where are we now, in Kalamazoo?
Yeah.
The kids here were very, very good. I mean, very ecstatic. And it's always gratifying, to know that you can knock yourself out physically, and not be absolutely trained at the end of a show, and to know that it's absolutely worthwhile, to know that somebody's gotten off on it, That's really what makes the whole thing worthwhile. It really does.
Hey, we can't wait till you get here, believe me. And we got a lot of kids who are painting their faces today just to practice for tomorrow because they want it to look perfect. And hey, some of them are just really there. If you walk into them on the street and you wonder, hey, is this the real thing?
Fabulous. I don't know if the people in Cadillac realize it, but there are going to be over 60 major newspapers, magazines, all kinds of situations going on. There's going to be a film crew that's going to be coming in to film it. I don't know if people in I'm sure people in Cadillac read Cream magazine. Cream's going to be there, somebody from People magazine. I mean, it's going to be it. Cadillac is going to be put on the map if we have anything to say about it. I hear the football team's doing great.
They are, gung-ho.
Oh, I love it.
We're going to kill them Friday, believe me.
Cool. Tell me something, are we going to be there for the game?
I don't know. You tell me and we'll both know.
I don't think we're going to be there. I think we're leaving.
No, I think the game is at night, Friday night.
We're not.
And I think you'll be in the parade Friday morning. But then the game will actually be Friday night.
But we'll have a videotape crew there, and we'll tape it, and then we'll watch it back in the office. Phil, we've got our limos outside. We've got to leave for our next appointment. Please give our best to everybody in Cadillac. And we'll see you all tomorrow. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Okay, we'll see you tomorrow then. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We went down to the school grounds and we waited for Kiss to arrive. Well, I thought they were supposed to come in by helicopter, but as it turned out, they drove up in like 5 different limousines. There was the road crew, and then each of the guys, the band members, Paul and Gene and Ace and Peter, were in their own limousine. So it was, for Cadillac High School, it was pretty spectacular. So
we got to Cadillac, Michigan, and lo and behold, the whole high school was in Kiss makeup. But not just the high school kids. The teachers were in Kiss makeup. The principal was in Kiss makeup. And it was quite amazing. And some of the police were in KISS makeup. The firemen were in KISS makeup. They had changed the names of the streets. And so we went through the streets of Cadillac, Michigan, on top of fire trucks, and with everyone along the side, not everyone, but most of the people along the sides of the streets in KISS makeup.
What about the big KISS sign? You know, there's a giant KISS sign that hovers over the stage. At that time, there was no garage door in the Cadillac High School gym, so they were going to bring the sign in through the double doors. But there was a problem. There was a post there, and the post was made of wood. And I heard a chainsaw rev up. And I came running out, and the two road crew members were just about ready to saw a big hole in the door. And I told them they couldn't do that. They could bring whatever they could bring in through the doors, but not that. So the only piece of equipment we didn't bring in was the huge KISS sign. The art students made us a big KISS sign out of cardboard that we put behind the stage. The other thing that we needed that the band said they wanted to do was a new special effect just invented for Cadillac. I was not supposed to know what it was and didn't. What they did was they took confetti and put it in a big net above the stage. And they wanted, in the last song, Rock and Roll All Night, Party Every Day, they wanted to let this go and blow it around so that it was like a snowstorm. But to do that, we needed compressed air. And the only place you could get compressed air were on ambulances in Cadillac. So we told the ambulance guys, we need compressed air. And they said, here's what we'll do. If we're not out on a call when that song needs to be played, we'll come to the Cadillac gym, we'll take our compressed air, we'll blow the confetti around, make a snowstorm, and then we'll rush back to our base, refill the tanks so that we're ready to go. And that's how we got the KISS Snowstorm. That's a signature closing on all their concerts to this day. They do it at every concert, and it was invented specifically for Cadillac, Michigan.
So there was a warm-up act. I don't really remember them playing, but during the break, while they were waiting for KISS to set up for the concert, there was a kid standing next to me. He says, wow, this is phenomenal. I just heard about this. I said, well, where are you from? He goes, I'm from Saginaw. I just heard about this show at 4 o'clock this afternoon, and I just drove straight here. So here's a kid. He's a KISS fanatic. Can you imagine? Only a few hours earlier, he didn't know anything about this. Suddenly, he's standing right next to me, in essence, the front row, at his favorite band's concert. It was unbelievable. When the band was finally announced, they came out a little 20 minutes later, I think around 9:20. The place went wild.
I was just overwhelmed. I mean, here was this whole wall, you know, of amplifiers all stacked one on top of another, just a bank of them. And I'd never seen such a thing, and I certainly hadn't experienced such a thing. And it was physically painful. It hurt. And your ears kind of protected themselves by sort of half shutting down, and so it was kind of like being underwater. That's the image I remember. The sound was kind of distorted as if you were underwater.
One of the strangest moments was the next morning when we had a breakfast with the mayor and one of the councilmen and one of the senators from the state. And we walked into this breakfast restaurant, and my gosh, the mayor was in KISS makeup. The mayor's wife was in KISS makeup. The senator was in KISS makeup. It was quite a breakfast. Turned out to be one of the most exciting days. And that breakfast, we were also presented with the key to Cadillac, Michigan.
And the next day they went to a civic breakfast where all the city fathers, the city manager, the mayor, the superintendent of schools, the high school principal, John Laurent, everyone appeared in makeup on the dais, and they each got a plaque. Now the plaque said honorary member KISS, and it had your name on it.
So the next day they had a KISS parade downtown, where the high school had made a bunch of floats, and here comes the band on one of the last floats, and they're throwing candy kisses into the crowd, and the photographers are having a field day. I was running alongside the float.
Later that morning, because the homecoming game was going to be Friday night. They went and we used to do a homecoming parade at 10:30 in the morning. So on Friday morning they appeared in the parade, and that's where you see them in the video that you've seen of the floats going down Mitchell Street and Kiss on those floats throwing candy to the crowd and everything, and the crowd following the float. That all happened about 10:30, 11 o'clock that morning. Again, unbeknownst to me, they had planned a tremendous exit from Cadillac High School.
And we left Cadillac, Michigan from the football field in a helicopter. No one really knew that the helicopter only flew for about 5 minutes because that's all we could afford to do. It kind of went over the trees and landed in the parking lot, and we got out and got into cars and left for New York.
On November 21st, Indiana Kiss fans Bill Starkey and Jay Evans founded the Kiss Army, a fan group with a difference, one that would take action and fight for their favourite band. After local radio station WVTS refused to play Kiss records, Starkey and Evans began pressuring them to change their playlist and add Kiss. Eventually, the station acquiesced and began to play Kiss songs, and thus the Kiss Army was born.
I was just a Kiss fan. I'd saw Kiss as an opening act in Evansville, Indiana. And back in the 70s, you used to call the request line, and most of the time you could get the music you requested on the air.
Yeah.
And I had seen Kiss, and I came back to Terre Haute, where I lived, and me and a friend of mine, Jay Evans, we would call in to the request line at WVTS and try to get Kiss played. And the disc jockeys, they were pretty good about it, but they told us that we had to go through the program director, who was rich. So we realized that we were up against quite a force there. So this was just two guys like Wayne and Garth in their basement, and we were calling ourselves the Kiss Army.
Yeah.
And we would write threatening letters to the radio station saying if you didn't play the band, we would blow the station up and all that. And we would get the few magazines that were out there of Kiss, we would cut out the pictures and mail them in, and we were just having a good old time, you know. I think maybe today that would be terrorism or something like that.
Oh, you'd be in jail, Bill, if you tried that nowadays.
What I liked about it was I read the letters on air and made fun of the punctuation.
Oh yeah, and it was bad because out of the two of us, Jay was the honor roll student, I was the guy in study all the time.
Yeah.
So it was my basement, and I'd seen Kiss, so we were doing these Kiss Army things, and then eventually Kiss came out with Kiss Alive, and that helped a lot. And the band had decided to come to Terre Haute, and Rich came up with the idea. He says, you know those stupid letters you guys write? He goes, why don't you just write about 5 at a time and package them, and we'll play them at 5 o'clock, you know, during my time. And I didn't realize, though, Rich would get the last word in, so no matter how clever we were, you know, Rich was... And this was before Howard Stern and trash radio or anything. I mean, Rich was brilliant. I mean, he picked us apart to the point where, you know, and of course we were naive. We were saying stuff like, well, Kiss is bigger than the Beatles and all this other stuff. So eventually, Kiss sells out the arena, and at that time, the only other band to sell out or act was Elvis Presley.
Yep.
And I guess when they contacted WVTS, Rich told them that there was a couple morons calling themselves the Kiss Army, and all of a sudden, 40 years later, I'm still in the news, I guess.
All right, man. That's a good story.
How
Bill.
old were you, Bill, when you formed the Kiss Army?
18.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna follow you over to Peaches and see you kissing everybody and okay. Oh dear.
At an in-store appearance in Peaches Records in Atlanta, fan turnout spiraled out of control. The band left handprints and autographs in concrete in front of the record store. Traffic stopped, police intervened. Instead of resisting, the band embraced it. The Kiss Army wasn't accidental. It was encouraged, named and legitimized. Another example of instinct meeting intention.
How many kisses have you given away?
How many kisses? Can you conceive of a big number?
That many. Oh, I see your tongue. Tongue is not.
Well, that's the thing. Actually, what's happened is a lot of people have come up that want to taste tongue.
Delaney understood identity. Aucoin understood loyalty. Bogart understood scale. On December 31st, Kiss had reached another milestone. Returning to their hometown of New York City, they had a sold-out New Year's Eve show. Selling out Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum with Blue Oyster Cult marked the band's arrival as true headliners. No qualifiers, no excuses. By the end of 1975, Kiss were no longer alone. They had built an inner circle, one that believed in the spectacle, the ambition, and the long game. Alive had changed their lives. But more importantly, it had proven that belief, when shared and organised, could become reality. The band that once struggled to be heard was now preparing to conquer the world, and this time they weren't doing it alone. Hello, it's me again, the voice of the video, just confirming again that I'm not AI, I'm a real person. I want to thank you so much for watching. I'm glad so many of you are enjoying these videos. I've already begun working on episode 4, 1976, and the way it's looking, it might be 1976 part 1, because a lot happened in 1976. But yeah, work is already underway. It will be with you as soon as is possible. I like to get the Kiss videos out on a Friday, but again, I really want to thank you for watching and the support on this channel. There's no obligation, but if you are feeling generous, I have a Patreon. There's a link in the description. It just helps. But either way, I'm just glad you're enjoying them. Make sure you like. If you haven't already, press that old subscribe button. Let's get them numbers up. And I better get back to work on episode 4, so I'll see you in the next one. Thanks very much again. Catch you later, Bill and Ted.